We need to discuss what would happen if the incoming flow of drugs were to dry up. First, the outgoing laundered dollars would be gone, leaving only the incoming dollars from abroad. Second, there would be no more profits from the war on drugs, which would mean a lot more printed money, and this would very quickly lead to problems for the ESF. I mention this because the incoming flow of drugs has been interrupted once before. Breakdown in the flow of heroin. In 1979, when the dollar was collapsing, the ESF's capital position was negative, and all hope for the dollar seemed lost, the CIA began its biggest covert operation ever, by supporting Osama bin Laden and other guerrilla fighters in Afghanistan. An integral part of the CIA's intervention was a huge increase in the production of opium and heroin, which have continued rising ever since. One of the key architects of all this was George W. Bush Sr. Anyhow, the heroin trafficking was handled by BBCI up until its collapse in 1991, after which it was handled by a terrorist organization known as Al-Qaeda. And something went terribly wrong for the ESF Al-Qaeda heroin operation in 2001. You see, in the fall of 2000, the Taliban announced a total ban on the cultivation of opium. Taliban militia then went out and burned heroin labs and drugs. The ban was a success. Of course, the world refused to recognize this good deed. In fact, the US hit Afghanistan with sanctions. Despite this, the betting was the ban was going to hold up. Heroin stocks were going down and they wouldn't be replaced. The Taliban's eradication of poppies was probably the most dramatic event in the history of illegal drug markets. There was no chance that opium from other sources could compensate for the loss, and by June opium had gone up 5 to 7 times in price. Now you remember what happens when the flow of drugs gets interrupted, right? Well, as seen on the Fed's website, things started to get really interesting around the middle of 2001. Now at the beginning of the year everything was normal. The growth of currency was in single digits. But as July came around, that changed. By August, the amount of dollars in circulation was soaring. The increase in currency in circulation from June to August 2001 was the largest in recorded history. Deficits were about to start mattering again. But then, in September 2001, 9/11 happened. One skyscraper collapsed. Then a second skyscraper collapsed. Finally, a third skyscraper, World Trade Center 7, collapsed. No one has really explained why this third skyscraper collapsed. Also unexplained is why molten steel was found weeks after 9/11 at Ground Zero.
This is how it's been since day one. Oh, it's unbelievable. And this is 6 weeks later. It's probably 1,500 degrees.
8 weeks later, we still got fires burning. At one point, I think there were about 2,800 degrees. There were fires of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit below the ground.
Finally, no one has explained why scientists around the world are finding nanothermite, a military-grade explosive, in the dust from 9/11. This is a peer-reviewed paper published in a scientific journal for those of you who know what that means. The flow of heroin is restored. September 11 solved the ESF's heroin problem. By October, heroin was flooding into the West. Wholesale prices dropped, and farmers went back to growing poppies. By the next year, opium production was back where it was supposed to be. However, the invasion did more than just restore Afghan poppy production. It took it to a whole new level. Most of this increase came from Helmand province. And guess who controls this Helmand province?
You know, they have these opium fields, and we are tolerating it. We are tolerating the cultivation of the opium. Here you have one of the best fighting forces in the world ever mounted. And in a sense, you're watching as this opium is being grown.
Afghanistan now produces 93% of the world's opium, and it is being grown under the protection of US troops. Predictably, the skyrocketing production has had deadly domestic implications. By 2006, Afghan heroin was potent, cheap, and pouring into the US, causing a surge in heroin-related deaths. And the problem has continued to grow as heroin has roared back to life in America, killing more and more people across the US. Also predictably, Afghanistan got hit by an AIDS epidemic. Although the country used to have negligible rates of AIDS, the US then invaded and turned it into the largest producer of heroin in the world, and now AIDS is killing thousands. The donations appreciated. It has taken an enormous amount of time and effort to make these 5 videos, so if you enjoyed them, please don't hesitate to donate. Thank you.